Hello guys, welcome to the channel and welcome to another sort of like not a top 5 or top 10 but just 5 films that I think I'd be cool to watch this this October. Now I have done a top a 10 sort of great films to watch this autumn already, and there will be a top sort of Halloween one near Halloween. But I'm going to go today 5 brutal horror films worth watching this October, because of my top 10. My last one for the autumn was not sort of like any. I've tried to leave out any sort of like extreme horror or any sort of like really sort of brutal one. So I thought I'd do 5 today, just for those of you that like the more brutal side of the horror films. So I've got 5 titles here. These are not in the top 5. These are just 5 that I thought, well, these would be cool watches to watch this October. And first up is an Australian horror called Wolf Creek 2, which is the follow-up to Wolf Creek. Wolf Creek is quite brutal as it is, but this one is worse. It's more brutal. So if you enjoyed the first one, you will like this one because it goes a little bit further. I know there's a lot of sort of like and ahhing over sort of like the main character. Is it John Jarratt, his name is? I know he's been subject to criminal activities back in Australia and stuff like that. And I know that's put quite a few people off the film, but it doesn't stop this being a great film. Obviously the premise follows on from the first one, where you got this sort of wacky Australian guy living in the outback, sort of preying on sort of people, tourists and stuff that are coming through and torturing them. So that's what the sort of premise of the film is, sort of thing, and this is a follow-on from it. And it is definitely a good sort of brutal watch if you like your sort of films to be sort of like violent. And then, talking of violence, next up we're going to look at The Loved Ones. This is once again another sort of real brutal film about this young girl sort of dating this guy, and they sort of break up, but then they sort of capture and torture him, sort of things like that. It's another sort of brutal sort of film, and it's one of those films when you're watching it and you just want that scene to stop, but it doesn't. It just keeps going and going and going. And you sort of meet her sort of her father, and you see how sort of deranged she is. But it is quite a cool film. It is a really, not really one that's spoken about a lot. So I might watch this myself again over the next few days and do a review on my channel, because it's not really one I've seen sort of people talk about on the channel, on any channel really. And it is quite a demanding, brutal horror, but very, very cool. I really enjoyed it. So The Loved Ones. Next up is a serial killer film starring Matt Dillon. It's the house that Jack built. This is quite a disturbing film to watch. He plays a serial killer, and the film is sort of filmed on seeing him doing what he's doing, and he meets this woman with his young children, and sort of they build a relationship, and he ends up sort of like killing them and stuff like that. It's quite a strange, bizarre serial killer film, but it's a very brutal serial killer, and if you've seen it, you know what I mean. But be warned, it does contain child killings in it, so just be warned of that, because that might be something that puts you right off it. But it's quite cool to see Matt Dillon playing quite a harsh sort of like horror role. You know, you sort of picture him more of like more of a sort of major movie star, but here he is playing this sort of sleazy serial killer in the house that Jack built. So there's another recommendation that's brutal. Next up, we're going to one of my other favourite genres of film, which is westerns, and we're going to go with Kurt Russell in Bone Tomahawk. This is a fantastic film. It is a bit of a slow burn, but then it kicks off later in the film, because it's about him that's been hired to go looking for these missing people in this part of America, and they come across this sort of tribe living in this sort of cave, and that's when the brutality sort of starts. Well, again, the sort of torturing and the killings going on there. It is quite a difficult watch when it gets to that part of the film, but it is a really, really cool sort of Western horror film, and there's not many of them. There's not enough Western horror films. I think there's such a subgenre that just does not get explored enough, and I think there could be some amazing sort of films, because a lot of Westerns are revenge movies, and a lot of them are set in such sort of derelict places. I mean, there's nothing more perfect for a horror film, right, than a derelict place. So, please, filmmakers, let's have some more horror Western films. But this is a brutal watch, and it's really, really cool. Quite violent, with some very turn your head away looking scenes. So, yeah, definitely worth a watch if you're into that sort of more brutal sort of horror. Bone Tomahawk. And last but not least, we've got a double bill for probably the most brutal watch for this October, and it has to be Terrifier 1 and 2. I've put them both in there because you can buy them as a set, Terrifier 1 and 2, just like I have, and it's a good way to do it, to collect them and watch them both together. You just got to have a strong stomach and time. They're not short films. I think Terrifier is about 2 hours, and I think Terrifier 2 is about 2.5 hours. And the new one that's coming out in October is also just over 2 hours long. So you've got to have the time to be able to stick out quite hardcore violence and gore in this disturbing sort of festive masterpieces, if you like, because I absolutely love the films. A lot of people, when this came out, everyone rushed out to buy it. You couldn't pick it up anywhere. Oh, I've got to get Terrifier. And then everyone realised, oh, it's not my cup of tea, or it's too strong for them. Oh, it's rubbish, or it's boring. And it's just because they can't sort of take it or anything. So they ended up sort of like trading them in places. So it's not expensive to buy. I think the double pack, you can probably pick up for about 15 quid. But it's got two amazing, really brutal horror films that are definitely worth checking out if you're into sort of like really gory slasher films. This is based on Art the Clown, who's like a serial killer. He's dressed like a clown, but the story unfolds of his sort of story within the second one more than the first one. And I believe the third one that's coming in the cinemas in October sort of carries on from the second one. I believe it's based at Christmas time. The second one is based around the sort of Halloween time. So that is quite a cool one to watch around the sort of Halloween sort of time if you've got the stomach. Be prepared, you need a strong stomach for the Terrifier films. So there we go. I've picked out 5 brutal films for you for this October. We've got Wolf Creek 2, definitely worth checking out. The Loved Ones, underrated film, really cool. The House That Jack Built, a bit of a disturbing watch and a bit sort of out there. Bone Tomahawk, a Western horror. Slow burn, but very, very brutal. Very cool. And, of course, a slasher with the Terrifier 1 and 2, The Bloody Duel. So, definitely worth checking them out, guys. And I hope you've enjoyed this little video. Just a short one today. Just wanted to give you guys, because, you guys know I love my sort of extreme brutal horror. And when I did my top 10 films to watch in October or autumn, whatever I might have called it, I can't remember. I kind of left the brutal ones out and went with more sort of horrors, more acceptable. So I wanted to give you guys that like the more sort of like hardcore stuff, that more of an option. Anyway, guys, thanks for checking this out. Check out some other horror channels. Check out Horror Hands, Horror Geek, Manview Film, RS Design, Pizzawell, I Am Icelord, Cat Watches Horror Movies, Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House. And a massive shout out to the lad. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I'll see you all soon.